like to call the October 24th meeting of the Millcreek Township Board of Supervisors to order, and we'll begin with a pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I'll call for public comment on agenda items other than those dealing with development or rezoning applications. Okay, hearing none, we have minutes from our last meeting of October 10th. If there are no additions or corrections to those, I'll entertain a motion.
I so move to approve the minutes from our October the 10th meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Groh?
I vote yes.
Mr. Morgan?
I vote yes.
I vote yes. And then we have a series of bills from the last 2 weeks. If there are no additions or corrections to those, I'll entertain a motion.
I think we need to pay some bills. I'll move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Groh?
I vote yes.
Mr. Morgan?
I vote yes.
I vote yes. Next, as we've been doing this past year, we have our third quarter financial presentation from Mark Zachewski. And Mark, the floor is yours if you want to.
Okay, as we had started last year and continuing this year, we're doing a quarterly financial presentation to keep everyone informed of how the township's doing relative to its budget and try to create some transparency. The first one is comparing the revenue year to date versus last year. We're in about the same position relative to the prior year. Property taxes, they're pretty constant. They don't rise much because it's based on the value. We haven't increased the millage. Income taxes, once again, are pretty flat. So we're, this year versus last year, revenues are pretty much the same. This is budget comparison, budget to budget, and we really didn't have any component issues, changes there either. Year-to-date expenses, we are actually running a little bit better than last year in terms of the expenses are a little bit below, and that's always good. Okay, when we get to selected expense comparisons, these are usually the biggest ticket items in these categories, and so we're looking at these. And in the general government expense, we have a budget of $1.161 million for salaries and spent just under $1.1 million. It means we're $61,000 to the good. One of the things that's not in there, we had a budgeted increase of 2.5%, which has not been paid at this point yet. But even with that, we would still be below the budget allotment. So I think some of it has to do with some of the hourly components of the general government employees. Health insurance, we're running to the good. That's luck of the draw. We don't have a whole bunch of control, but it's always nice when we estimate that our expenses are going to be higher and they turn out to be better than that. Actually, every area of government except one is ahead of budget on the health insurance. Other benefits, you're going to see a recurring theme. We're better than budget in every category, and that's because we make essentially all the payments to the pension plan in the fourth quarter. That's about $1 million for each of the plans, $1.5 million. So that number will come more in line as you bring the numbers together for the end of the year. Legal is one where we're ahead of or behind the budget. Part of that is there was interest on a settlement that wasn't previously accrued, and we're just running ahead due to the certain ongoing lawsuits. Public safety, once again, we're running ahead on salaries. That's largely attributed to overtime. We're running favorable in overtime on the police department, and that is good. That means we're manning our staffing within with the current personnel and not incurring the overtime we thought we might. Some of that may change a little bit in the fourth quarter, along with the other benefits or the salaries, because there's a lot of holidays at the end of the year, so there's some extra overtime. But being the fact that we're almost 200,000 to the good, we still should end up ahead in that category. Health insurance, once again, favorable, and then the other benefits largely impacted by the pension. And then the contribution to the fire departments is a lagging expense. We only make the contributions when they turn their quarterly reports in. They don't, if they don't turn a report in timely, it holds up their payment, so therefore the budget assumes that they're turning these in timely, but our actual payments are reflected in how people actually turn in the reports that are required. In the streets, salaries are impacted in part by that wage increase that hasn't been paid yet. You can see this is the only department where the health insurance is running negative, and although it's not a huge number, it is still negative. But to get all the other segments right and to be off a little bit on one is still not a bad deal. Other benefits are pension related mostly. Snow removal is, we should start seeing that climb maybe if the weather service is right as the year goes on. The good thing is we shouldn't incur a huge amount of expense in the balance of the year. The barns are all full. We had gotten a good price on salt last year, didn't use as much as we thought we would, given the fact that the winter was fairly mild, and so we loaded up on the salt at a good price to the extent we had a place to store it. In terms of parks and recreation, there we're running a little bit behind on salaries, and that's because of the part-time help for all the summer programs. There's a lot of the expense that's incurred in the third quarter of the year that then there's like almost no one on the program side come the fourth quarter of the year. So that number should bounce back by the time we get to the end of the year. You can see they're running favorable on their health insurance, and the other benefits is pension related. In terms of community and other expenses, recycling salaries are slightly positive. There's probably ran a little bit heavier on overtime. Their budget assumes more or less minimal operations in the fourth quarter, but when you spread the budget evenly throughout the year, you end up with an anomaly when you're comparing incurred expenses to smooth expense. Streetlight expenses show negative, and that is because the change in the rider for the lighting expense. By the same token, we are $260,000 ahead on the revenue side, so we've more than offset the expense. And so as that incurs through the next cycle rider filing with the PUC, we'll continue to match those two and have to obviously budget more expense, but then also budget more revenue for the next year's budget. Okay, in terms of the capital plan, we're showing an uncommitted balance of about $2.2 million. Now, there's a variety of projects that are in the budget that, and for any one of a variety of reasons, aren't probably going to happen this year. There was a piece of equipment out in at the recycling center in Millfair that they were looking to get a second grant. The state hadn't opened those grants up yet, so therefore we're not making that purchase. There's $500,000 in there for that. The golf course had money put aside there. Construction isn't going to happen until next year. There's about $155,000 there. So there's a reason for some of that. And then also, too, certain expenses for various 88 projects are now finally rolling in. We've got a lot of bills paid even in October that'll shrink that somewhat as well. And also, too, as we wrap up the charges for street paving, mostly the gooey stuff, the asphalt stuff itself, is what we've got left to pay. Most of the stone's already here. But that's relatively expensive, and so those numbers will come closer together. But we'll still be well under budget in terms of the capital plan because of certain timing issues that, by no fault of anybody, just aren't going to get accomplished this year. So they'll have to be rebudgeted for next year. right, any questions? All righty, well, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions from the board?
Not
Right.
from me. I think we're doing pretty good. Of course, these numbers, not just actual presentation, but our budget numbers are online all the time, right?
Pretty much is it.
Yeah. So that information is available on the township website. You'll find a link to that and gives you how we're doing so far. We like to stay on the good side.
Okay, next we have funding recommendation for Westlake Volunteer Fire Department for their roof repair. And I'll go back to you, Mark, on that one.
Okay. The request was for
Bless you.
$18,850 for a replacement for the Westlake Volunteer Fire Department roof. That roof has a life of 15 years based on its warranty. And so it seemed reasonable to use a portion of that life as the amortization period. Given the fact that most roofs aren't going to have much in the line of repair costs in the first 5 years, it seemed reasonable to spread that $18,000 over 5 years, making the annual cost per year $3,770. The idea was then to spread that per annual cost amongst the 4 fire departments and deducting it from the LST monies that they receive. By doing so, that would reduce the annual LST amount by $942.50 per department. And that would reduce their quarterly take by $235.63. So this year they're getting $42,499.83 per quarter. If you reduce their quarterly take by the $235.63, reduces that down to $42,264.20. It would be my recommendation to adopt this methodology for funding this project. It seems to be the most fair way. The fire departments do have commitments that they use the LST monies for, so just, chunking a big chunk of money out of their cash flow would cause them harm, whereas this way it would allow them to adjust either through reducing expenses, increasing fundraising, and gives them time to adapt.
Just quickly, since we have quite a few visitors here, Mark was referring to the LST money, which is our local services tax. That's the $52 per year that you would pay if you were working in Millcreek Township. And the township designates a significant portion of that money that's collected to the volunteer fire departments. And as Mark stated, that's about $42,500 per quarter for each of the 4 volunteer fire departments. And again, Mark, what you're stating then is if the cost of the roof was amortized over 5 years and divided equally among the 4 departments, it would have very little impact on the quarterly payments, $235.63.
That's correct.
So it's a minimal cost for the 4 departments, and if in fact the departments agree to this proposal, then I would congratulate the departments on finally kind of coming together and deciding what's important to the fire departments and being willing participants to help fund that need. So I think this is a reasonable approach to helping Westlake fund their new roof.
If I could just add that for those who may not be aware, especially people out in the audience, and of course in our viewing audience too, the township has taken a slightly different approach into funding the fire departments, and I think it's in the right direction here, where eventually, as time goes on, the township will be responsible for building maintenance and also for purchases of fire equipment, and possibly even more things, more apparatus, SCBA tanks, turnout gear, and so on under joint purchasing. The only thing that the fire departments would really need to do is supply the manpower, the personnel to put out the fires, to answer the emergency calls. One of their biggest challenges is finding the funding to do what they need to do. The township here, our board of supervisors, we're taking a lead approach on this here and saying, hey, we'll help you out, we'll take care of these things. Here's just one example. I think this, if I understand you correctly, Mark, this will be used in other examples too?
That would be the formula I would recommend
same
to
formula.
use as we go forward.
Okay.
The amortization period may be different, depending on what it is that is being purchased.
Right.
But certainly there would be a similar methodology being used.
Before anybody gets the wrong impression, I think I saw a couple of puzzled looks out there. What John was referring to is what's being discussed by the Fire Commission, correct?
Yes, I'm sorry, I should have clarified
Yeah,
that. Fire
nothing has
Commission.
been decided yet.
Right.
The township has not taken any official action to fund the purchase of apparatus for the fire departments, but that is one of the options that's been seriously considered by the
That's correct,
Fire
yes.
Commission.
Yes, and by no means are we the innovators on this, because we followed the several different models across the state of fire commissions. And this is what we're doing. We're custom fitting it to fit our needs here at Millcreek Township with the service area that we have, the population, and the fire departments, you know, with the way we have this arranged here. So it's nothing new. It is what's happening in fire service. We've relied on volunteers for so long, and sadly that has gone away. It's going away rapidly. And we do need to find some measures to help keep these guys afloat. And this is just one of our ways of doing it there.
So with that, I suppose what we should do here is formally approve this proposal and then get a thumbs up or thumbs down from the fire departments as to whether or not they agree to this type of funding.
Okay, with that said, I'll make the motion to approve that.
Okay, is there a second?
I guess I also want to make sure what we're voting on. We're voting to approve this recommendation for funding pending the approval of the Fire Emergency Services Commission?
Yes, I would think that the vote would actually go through the commission, correct?
Yeah, see if they're okay with it, yeah.
The original request came from the commission. We said that we would come up with a funding proposal. We can then send this back to the commission and see if they approve the proposal.
Okay, just want to make sure. I will second the motion.
All right, Mr. Grove?
I vote yes.
Mr. Morgan?
I vote yes.
I vote yes. Next, we have bids and quotations received. The first is for the MS4 proposals, which were opened last week. Is that correct, Rick?
Yes.
You want to handle that?
Requests for proposals to assist the township with DEP-required pollutant reduction plans were submitted to 5 engineering firms. 3 submitted proposals October 19th, and those 3 are HRG at $59,025. That's Herbert, Ruin, Roland, and Grubeck. GPI, Greenman Peterson Incorporated, at $167,800 even, and AMEC at $173,399. The proposals are currently under review. We expect to prepare the board or present the board with a recommendation to award at the next meeting.
For our folks that are here and our viewing public, could you just give us a really quick Reader's Digest version of what the MS4 program is and why we are soliciting for proposals?
It stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer Systems, and we have been designated, or I guess required, to eliminate sediment in 6 streams within the township, and those are Walnut Creek, Mill Creek, and the West Branch of Cascade Creek, as well as Wilkins, Marshall, and Scott Runs. So as we go through the pollutant reduction plans and we try to educate people about pollutants in our streams and other waterways, we try to help the aquatic life, and in the sediment impaired streams, we're hoping to help the aquatic life in those streams by reducing the sediment. We do a lot of this already through stormwater management. When someone wants to build some impervious surface, they have to either store the water and release it gradually so we don't have a lot of erosion in our streams, so we replenish the groundwater, and so we eliminate a lot of pollutants being washed away and into our streams in the lake. So we're working on it, and we need to do other things, and we're not the only ones. There are many across Erie County and in fact across Pennsylvania. The western side of the state is behind the eastern side, which has had to do a lot of work into the Chesapeake Bay for years.
So you will be reviewing the proposals for the next 3 weeks and have a recommendation at our next meeting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes.
can just add, the proposals are ultimately for them to come up with a plan that would be submitted with a new NPDES permit application that relates to stormwater, which would be due from the township in June of 2018. So the idea is to get the consultant on board now so that we'll be in a position to submit that application in a timely manner as required by the department. And the plans require that the sediment loadings that are identified be reduced by 10%.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Morris,
Yes.
maybe I missed it. I understand that this isn't a bid, so it doesn't have to go to the lowest amount, but what's the timeline for making a recommendation for the board to approve?
We'll have it by the next meeting in 3 weeks.
Okay, Rick, as long as you're up, the ADA project for the municipal building.
We requested quotes from 3 companies for nearly 1,400 square feet of sidewalk removal and replacement on the south side of the building here in order to become ADA compliant. Amendola Development came in at $15,468. Davila Concrete Construction at $21,822, and Daily Concrete Services provided no quote. After reviewing the quotes, we're recommending that it be awarded to Amendola Development in the amount of $15,468.
Okay, any questions from the board? Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve that contract, to award that contract, that is, to Amendola Development at the amount of $15,468.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Grove?
I vote yes.
Mr. Morgan?
I vote yes.
And I vote yes. I'll handle the next one. It's in regard to storm sewer pipe cleaning. This was from John Blows from the sewer department. He obtained 2 quotes, and this is for the cleaning of the elliptical pipe that runs between Peninsula Drive and Marshall Run. We recently completed, I think just last week, the cleaning of Marshall Run from the golf course area down nearly to 12th Street. That was in dire need of being cleaned out. We were able to get that completed, and now we want to clean the pipe out that flows into Marshall Run. That is the classic, that area is the classic example of being at the bottom of a bowl. West 17th Street is surrounded by area that's actually higher, and so it collects water and it needs somewhere to drain. So if we can get that large, I believe it's goes anywhere from 30-inch to 48-inch, I think, Rick, pipe?
It's actually a pipe arch.
Oh, it's the whole thing's the pipe arch? Okay, 30.
Most of it is, yes.
Okay. And we'll get that cleaned out and hopefully improve the drainage situation in that area. John Blows obtained a quote from, right here. Got one from Insight Pipe at a cost of $2,550 per day, with an estimate of taking between 10 and 12 days to complete the work. He also received a quote from State Pipe Services for $3,200 per day. These numbers would exceed the bidding limits set by the state. However, the price quoted by Inside Pipe is on a state contract, a CoStar's contract number 16, and so we are able to award a contract without going through the formal bidding process. So I would move that Inside Pipe be awarded that contract for $2,550 per day. And Mark, we had a conversation regarding the funding for this, that we do have money in the budget that was set aside for storm sewers.
Yes, we had about $100,000 in total. We've spent about 76 so far. This would be slightly over that, but there's room in the maintenance budget for streets to cover the small overage there.
In case it does run 10 to 12 days as
Yeah.
opposed to 9 days.
Yep.
This, just a question there, Brian, I didn't mean to interrupt you. This will take care of, like, not going to say take care of, but it's over in the area of Moondock Plastics.
Correct.
And all those places that have been traditionally flooded, and hopefully this will be the cure for that? or at
Well,
least
it
not
will help.
Entirely,
Well,
but.
as I said, they are at
step
the
in the right
bottom of a
direction.
bowl, so
Yeah.
a large, and Rick, jump in here, but that has been a long time trouble area because of the topography. This will definitely help, number one, for storage, it will have greater capacity, and having the Marshall Run cleaned out will help the flows. When that comes up, it does shut off that pipe, so hopefully that'll allow that
flow.
drainage course to drain more quickly.
Right direction, yeah.
Correct, and it depends upon the storm.
Okay. With that said,
Okay.
I'll second that motion that you have, Brian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Morgan, or Mr. Grove?
I vote yes.
Mr. Morgan?
Vote yes?
I vote yes. Next, we have action on the proposed ADA transition plan. This was tabled from our October 10th meeting, and I'll refer to our solicitor for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The ADA transition plan is ready for the board's review and approval. The transition plan has been available to the public since, I think, August 8th of 2017. We received no comments from the public with respect to the plan. We did provide the plan also to the plaintiffs in the Voices action, and they additionally did not have any comments to the plan. We did make some additional changes to the plan based on changes of circumstances. Some projects that we thought might get done this year were pushed back due to unforeseen circumstances, so we made those modifications. We also added the Millcreek Golf and Learning Center to the plan, since that's going to be reopening. We added that to the plan as well. We did provide all of those changes to the folks at Voices, and they had no objection to any of the changes that we made. So we would recommend that the supervisors adopt this plan as the Millcreek Township transition plan, and with that is Resolution 2017 R43, which would formalize the adoption of the plan by the township.
Okay, and there was an article in this morning's newspaper about the plan, stated that we have spent well over $100,000 in 2017 on various projects dealing with the transition plan, about another 130-some thousand next year. In 2019, about another $100,000. So we're well on the way with the projects that were completed this year, but we still have a ways to go.
Yeah, in fact, the vote you just took a few minutes ago on the municipal building is one of the projects covered under the transition plan. I know, for example, this year, Asbury Park was one of the major projects that was undertaken, and that was, I believe that is completed at this point, and I've gone by it several times. It looks great. And it really, I think, enhanced the appearance of the park, and certainly will increase the accessibility of the park for those with disabilities. So I think it's a really good thing that the township has been able to do.
Okay. Any comments from the board, or is there a motion regarding the resolution?
I'll move to approve Resolution 2017 R43.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Groh?
I vote yes.
Mr. Morgan?
I vote yes.
I vote yes. Thank you, Bart. Next is Resolution 2017 R44. This is a resolution pursuant to Resolution 2015 R20 and the Municipal Records Manual to approve proposed disposition of certain township records. And I will refer to our treasurer.
Okay, well, there's two elements to this particular request. The first one's the recurring MPD dash cam videos. These are not involved in any sort of investigations. And they take up huge amounts of space on our storage server, and so they need to be purged periodically. So this is a recurring item. The other one's a bit unusual. It's a request to finally destroy, wipe clean a server that is no longer in use. When a few years back, we were using an AS400 to store police records. Those have subsequently been moved to a SQL Server kind of database. The AS400 is no longer in use. This is just to go ahead and all the records that were on the AS400 were transferred to the new server. And there's a note from Chris Wilson, the IT person for the police department, that goes in far more detail than probably anyone wants to know as to exactly what they did. But this is just to allow Chris to wipe clean those hard drives and dispose of the server. The server disposal will be a separate issue, but this is to wipe those records clean from that those hard drives prior to disposing of the server.
Well, Chris says that eventually he'd like to try to sell it,
Yes.
and that'll be a whole nother issue when that time comes.
Yep. I told him if he thinks he gets more $2,000 for it, he's got to
Put it out for bid.
put it for out for bid. Otherwise, no.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
I was aware of this.
Entertain a motion?
Yeah, I'll move to approve Resolution 2017 R44, the disposal of those records listed.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Groh?
I vote yes.
Mr. Morgan?
I vote yes.
And I vote yes. Next, we have public radio system equipment option selections. This is for the new county-wide system. I'll refer to our solicitor on that.
Sure, this, I think, has been discussed at prior meetings with respect to the public radio system. The county is in the process of finalizing, I think, their agreement to make a purchase for a variety of equipment to benefit the public radio system, and they need from the township a decision on the equipment that it is seeking to purchase. You have in front of you an email that I received from Chief Height that identifies two options. One option relates to the fiber optic service charge. That would be a 36-month. The second option refers to a 60-month contract with the fiber optic service company. The balance of the costs would be the same. They'd be purchasing 2 dispatch consoles, console maintenance and support, fiber optic connection equipment, and fiber optic connection maintenance, as well as 2 fiber optic connections, which have been negotiated with the vendor at a cost of $10,000, and a fiber optic service charge is for the 36 months is $21,000 annually. The total cost of that option for the year 2018 would be $52,456.63, and then in each 2019 and 2020 would be $42,456.63. The alternative, if the board would decide to go with a 60-month vendor contract for this fiber optic service charge, the fee would be $46,456.63 in 2018, and then in each year, 2019 through 2022, the cost would be $36,456.63 each year. And so the county is looking for commitments of the township as to, the first question was whether to have I think it was the cell tower improvements versus fiber optic. The chief recommends the fiber optic and does not have a recommendation as to whether to go with the 36-month or the 60-month, but it indicated that Mark Zacheski had indicated he thought maybe the 36-month made sense at this point in time.
Do those totals come out about the same, Mark? If I'm looking quickly here, it's 91, 37. Looks like the cost would actually be more, so there must be some kind of a carrying charge or service charge or interest or something?
For multi-year.
For the 5-year?
Yeah, I would say there's going to be a little bit of interest charge in there.
Okay. Your recommendation is to go with the 3-year
3-year.
versus the 5-year?
And to the extent you would approve that, I would suggest there's been some discussion about entering into an agreement, obviously, with the county based on this equipment purchase, and I would suggest that any recommendation or approval of this equipment purchase is subject to entering into the appropriate agreement with the county to address this purchase.
Okay, any questions from the board? Any preferences?
So the action this evening is just to inform the county of our preferred option.
To indicate that we've approved, that the township would purchase these subject to entering into an appropriate agreement.
That we
And
prefer
which
the
option they would
fiber
select.
optic and whether it's 3-year or 5-year
Correct.
period, term.
Well, if the recommendation is for 3 years, I'm kind of inclined to go that direction for a 3-year contract.
And again, I wish I had the total here, but I think in the long run it would be a savings. Mark, what about the, it says the fiber optic service charge will most likely change beginning in year 4. Is that reflected, do you know, in the, that's not reflected in the 5-year?
No, that's not
So there
reflected
could
in
be,
the 5-year.
that could be in addition to those.
Correct.
numbers.
The 5-year locks you into that charge for that period of time. As I understand it, the fiber optic service charge is actually not with the county, but it's with the vendor, who I think is Velocity Net.
Okay.
But these are the prices that Velocity Net, I believe, had given to the county.
All right. Any questions? Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve that.
Is there a second?
I'll second, and again, conditionally upon us reaching a mutual an agreement with the county regarding the terms of the purchase.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Grove?
Vote yes.
Mr. Morgan?
I vote yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you, Mark.
I'm sorry, just to be clear, that was for the 36-month?
That was for the 3-year, correct.
Okay.
Next, we have emergency backup telephone service for the police department and the need for a budget amendment. And I'll refer back to the treasurer on that.
Okay, as has been reported in the paper, there have been some spotty outages of the non-emergency line into the police department, and that has mostly to do with Earthlink, the current phone service provider, and their network. This can be avoided by adding what they call a PRI card to our current phone server and having the fiber plugged into that PRI card so that if the circuits fail on the non-fiber circuits, the Earthlink circuits, it automatically kick into the Velocity Net network. And so the cost to do that is about $4,063. And then there's about $100 a month, like a telephone bill kind of service charge for the, so they incur a month or two this year, which wouldn't necessarily be budgeted. And then for next year, that would have to be a budgeted item going forward. I don't know how quickly they can, get this equipment in, so I don't know if there'll be any service charge for Velocity Net for this year, but definitely would be in the budget for next year. In terms of budget. There's excess funds still from the Granada settlement, and it would be my recommendation that we use the $4,062.50 of that excess to fund this request. Yep. We'd be adding it as a capital budget item and then funding it with the excess of the Granada settlement.
Transfer of the Granada money to the capital
That's
budget.
right, yeah.
Okay.
To put in some good use there, yeah.
So this would be for those watching, this would be a redundancy for our non-emergency phone system in the police department because they have experienced, unfortunately, several disruptions over the last few months. Any questions from the board? Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll move to approve that, that purchase of that PRI card at $4,062. Hopefully that will help solve that problem.
You want to include in that the
Oh, and-
amendment to,
And the amendment
Transfer
for the
the
budget,
funds.
for the budget transfer, I'm sorry,
Okay,
yes.
that's fine.
That's correct.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Grow?
Vote yes.
Mr. Morgan?
I vote yes.
I vote yes. Back to you, Mark, for the National Fuel Resources Agreement.
Okay. Our contract with National Fuel Resources to supply natural gas to the township building expires this month. And so what I am recommending is that we go with a short-term 12-month contract with National Fuel Resources. There's, in talking with the rep from National Fuel Resources, there's some uncertainty in the market. Prices may go up, prices may go down. So it's not really a good idea to get yourself locked into a long-term deal at this point, and give it 12 months and see how the market shakes itself out. You know, some of the drilling is down, and there's more pipeline capacity. So one change that has occurred last time we redid the contract, we were actually getting a credit for every what they call decatherm purchased, because they had more gas in this region than they could get rid of. And now we're paying a small surplus on that, which is typical. You typically pay a little surplus because it's based on the wellhead in someplace in Louisiana. I forget where, they get a name for it. And what this contract does too, it locks us in for 50% of our requirements at a fixed price and 50% at a market price. The reason for that is there are penalties if you are too far over or under your stated contract purchase, and you have to sell that gas back at the market plus a penalty. So you're only getting, if they have to sell excess gas, you'll get the market price plus
If you
a
don't
penalty.
use as much as you
Right.
said you were going to.
Or you got to go out and buy more. I looked at our usage over the last 2 years, 3 years, but it's so hard to guess because who knows what the winter's going to be. I mean, that's where our usage is heating the building, essentially. And the last 2 winters have been mild. The one winter that was in that spread was hard. The numbers that he originally showed on the purchase commitment were above and below the averages. So it's like, this is the safest way to go.
Okay.
It's almost like purchasing salt for the roads.
It's a guess.
Yeah, it's a crapshoot, yeah.
Okay, is there a motion regarding the National Fuel Resources Agreement?
I'll move to approve that agreement for National Fuel Resources
Okay,
Agreement.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Grow?
Vote yes.
Mr. Morgan?
I vote yes.
And I vote yes. Next on the agenda is the termination agreement with City Architecture, and I'll refer to Mr. Morgan for that.
Mr. Chairman, last spring, back in March, we hired City Architecture to be our consulting firm to work on our comprehensive plan, commonly referred to as Embrace Millcreek. On May 30th, we terminated that contract with City Architecture. The agreement you have in front of you is the termination agreement for that contract. We've been negotiating with City Architecture as far as what a fair fees should be paid for them for the work completed up to May 30th. The amount reached was $22,608.64. So this contract locks in that as a final payment, final full payment to City Architecture, and also guarantees the City Architecture will hand over all project materials that were produced as part of their effort during their time as the consulting firm.
And those materials will be able to be utilized by the new consultant?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, is there a motion? Or was that a motion?
Well, I'd make a motion we
Right.
adopt or authorize you to sign the contractual termination agreement.
Okay, is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Mr. Grow?
I vote yes.
Mr. Morgan?
How about yes?
I vote yes. Next, we have the ADA project for Asbury Park. This is change order number 1, and this is what our solicitor was just referring to a minute ago. Rick?
The original contract was awarded to Bavila Concrete Construction on September 26th. The contract price is $60,822. Additional sidewalk was required to be, or the sidewalk was changed due to an access route between the tennis courts and the volleyball court. There was also some additional restoration work to accommodate this route change. The additional cost still falls within the budgeted cost of the project, so the original contract amount of $60,822 is increased by change order number 1 by $6,450. The total updated contract amount is then $67,272, and we recommend approval of change order number 1.
And that should wrap up that project, correct? I don't think that there'll be
I
less
think it
else.
does.
Okay. All right, is there a motion regarding the change order?
I'll move to approve the change order for Asbury Park, change order number 1.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Grow?
I vote yes.
Mr. Morgan?
How about yes?
I vote yes. Rick, you want to handle number 16, the MOU
Sure.
for the NPDES?
This is a memorandum of understanding between the township and the Erie County Department of Planning. It details a municipal assistance program by the Erie County Department of Planning to provide the township with services related to the MS4 permitting requirements. And once again, MS4 is municipal separate storm sewer systems. The services include, number 1, education and outreach, and they propose to do that at a cost of us $100 per year. Number 2, data collection, information systems, and mapping, and that is very involved. They propose to do it $1,000 for $300 or 300 hours, and $10 an hour for after the first 300 hours of work. Number 3, planning and administrative support, and that price would be as agreed upon by the Erie County Department of Planning as well as the township. We've looked over the agreement. We think this is a fantastic deal for the township, and we appreciate the planning department's efforts. We recommend approval of the agreement.
This is a program that was initiated by the county because they saw a need for the various municipalities that are going to be required.
If I might, John. Actually, the project was initiated by Mr. Morris. It was Mr. Morris who suggested that we partner with surrounding municipalities. He actually arranged a little meeting after an MPO meeting with the county to discuss those issues and brought it to light. And we're very fortunate the county planning office agreed that they could play a role. And so I don't want to take anything away from Ms. Murdoch. The project manager did all the legwork, got everything moving. But I will say it was Rick who came to the table and suggested that some kind of multi-municipal program be initiated. So,
Way to go, Rick.
Thank you. Yeah, there are a lot of municipalities out there that do not have an engineer on staff to work on this, and there are a number of items that we're still responsible for. There are 6 minimum control measures, and this will help us with 3 of those 6.
And hopefully reduce costs for everybody involved.
Yes.
Okay. All right, is there a motion regarding the MOU with the Erie County Department of Planning?
I'll make a motion to approve the MOU.
there a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Grow?
I vote yes.
Mr. Morgan?
I vote yes.
I vote yes.
And Mr. Morris, I do need to apologize to you that, the year this goes into effect, you're not going to be here to enjoy not giving the educational seminar.
No.
You already gave yours for the year, right?
Usually do it in February.
Oh, well, then you're going to
Might
be
be
spared
I may
one more.
still have an opportunity.
I mean, if you'd like to do one more before you leave us.
We'll keep you on for that, okay?
Going away present. And you want to handle the next one, Rick,
Sure.
for the stormwater management and maintenance plan?
Sure. This is for the Cider Mill apartment garage. The agreement specifies that everything will be owned and maintained by the developer, and the stormwater management facilities are underground and approved by GPI. We recommend approval of the agreement.
This is the garage that we just approved the land development plan for a little while ago?
Correct.
Okay. Is there a motion regarding the stormwater management plan and maintenance agreement?
Yes, I will so move to approve that, both agreements for the stormwater management plan and the stormwater maintenance agreement.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Grow?
Vote yes.
Mr. Morgan?
I vote yes.
I vote yes. Communications, Mark?
Yes, I am seeking retroactive permission to attend a free local government benefits seminar that was held on Friday, October 20th at the Green Tree Municipal Building. The seminar was free, and some of the topics include new pension designs and how local governments can use them, new pension cases and what they mean to local government, and the latest healthcare strategies. And there was also latest developments from a representative of the Auditor General's office. I attended along with Diane Lyons. The only expense to the township was the time away from the office and the use of a township vehicle.
Okay. Is there a motion regarding the seminar?
Yeah, I'll move to approve that retroactively.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Grow?
I vote yes.
Mr. Morgan?
Aye.
And I vote yes.
I vote yes.
Also,
Mark,
too-
you want the fund depository?
Also, too, in order to help improve the yield on one of our accounts with Erie Bank, I moved the money to a CD. It's a 30-month CD at 1.81% versus the fine 0.38% we're getting on that same money in our savings account. So it gets us a little bit more. We're still not keeping up with inflation, but getting closer. Someday the rates will come back. I don't know. It's better than 18% interest on everything.
That's
so,
right. So you're looking for approval to move that money?
Yes.
Okay, is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll move to approve that transfer there.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Grow?
I vote yes.
Mr. Morgan?
I vote yes.
And I vote yes. Anything else, Mark?
God, I hope not.
John?
Which
No.
Joe?
Okay, I got several things here. Yeah. First one comes from Police Chief Scott Height for our meeting, public meeting request for today. I request that the Millcreek Township Board of Supervisors approve the following at the public meeting today. Number one, permission for the ISD officers to attend a 2017 Violent Crime Behavioral Analysis Seminar, November 7th through the 9th at the PSP Academy in Hershey, Pennsylvania. The class is sponsored by the FBI and the Pennsylvania State Police. The travel will be by department vehicle. The estimated costs are as follows. Registration is no cost. Lodging at Comfort Inn, $277. The per diem cost for meals at $69 a day, $517. Fuel, $50 estimate, for a total of $844.56. Put that in the form of a motion to approve that attendance by our officers.
I'm sorry, John, does it state how many officers that is?
I believe that's two.
Okay,
I believe that's two there, yep.
all right. That was a motion?
Yes, that's in form of a motion,
Is
yeah.
there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Grow?
I vote yes.
Mr. Morgan?
I vote yes.
I vote yes.
Okay, and item number two is permission for 4 officers to attend the domestic violence training Monday, November 13th from 8 until 12 at the Conservation District building on Wager Road here in Millcreek Township. Any of associated costs with the training will be covered by a grant the department receives from SafeNet. So I put that in the form of a motion for those 4 officers to attend.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
before you-
this isn't on the
Yeah,
agenda, I
none
was
of-
just looking.
Yeah, I
there,
just noticed that on the
that
last.
there's
one.
nothing.
Oh, geez, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, for any of the police requests. So I apologize, but I will call for any public comment on the previous
Yeah.
request regarding the
See, it's not on there.
permission to send the ISD officers to the November 7th, 9th seminar. Hearing none, and then for this request for the domestic violence training, is there any public comment on that?
Okay.
Okay, is there a motion? Did we get a motion on that,
I
Cheryl?
put that, I think I
Okay,
did.
motion? And a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Groh?
I vote yes.
Mr. Morgan?
I vote yes.
And I vote yes.
Okay, and on the line of the police department, this Saturday from 10 until 12, or 10 until 2, I'm sorry, out here in the lobby, there will be a drug take-back day. If you have any prescription drugs or any other drugs that need to be disposed of in the correct way, we prefer that you bring them here. This is done twice every year, and this Saturday happens to be the fall date of it. Please don't throw these things in the trash or down the toilet. Bring them here, we'll dispose of them the right way. We have a way of taking care of them up in Buffalo, New York. So please take advantage of that if you can. We appreciate it. That's that. And then I have one more, and it is with regret. This is a letter that came, or an email that came to the Board of Supervisors. Please accept this letter as my resignation from the Millcreek Township Sewer Authority, effective immediately. I appreciate being able to serve our community for these past 19 years on the authority, and have worked with many talented people with whom I've had the opportunity to volunteer. I am proud of the achievements and progress over these years, and believe that ratepayers in our community will have benefited from the guidance, decision, planning, and oversight of the authority, board, and capable staff. That comes from Nancy Lori, a member of our Township Sewer Authority. So I would put that, we have to approve that resignation there. So sadly, I'd like to make that motion to approve that from Ms. Lori, her resignation effective immediately.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Groh?
I vote yes.
Mr. Morgan?
I vote yes.
And I vote yes. And FYI for the list or viewing audience and those here, that means that we do have a vacancy on our sewer authority if anyone is interested in serving.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to offer our thanks to Ms. Lori for her service on the board.
Thank you.
That's all I
that it?
have. That's all I have there, guys.
Okay, we did have executive sessions on October 9th, the 11th, the 12th, and the 19th. And the only other thing that I have is I did receive a call today regarding the Dave Hanlon Community Park that is under construction up at on Cahe Road across from McDowell, and they are referring to that as a community park. And I would urge the board to consider, well, we're going to be meeting with Superintendent Hall this week, is that right?
Yes.
We can discuss with Mr. Hall what, if any, assistance the township can be in the opening of their new parks. I think it's going to be a tremendous facility that's going to be open to the public. It's not just going to be for students or athletic teams. It's going to be for the community to enjoy. So I think that's going to be a great addition. That's all I have. John?
Well, I just want to have a quick report out on Embrace Millcreek. We had a public online survey open for 3 weeks through the end of September and October. The survey closed on Friday. We don't have the results tabulated yet, but we received nearly 700 respondents to the survey, so we're very happy with the effort. We're very happy folks took the time to tell us what they think, and we'll keep the board and the public posted. Again, if you want to learn more about the project, visit embracemillcreek.com.
And I have to tell one quick story here. A woman from Kearsarge, 90-year-old resident, I don't think that she minds me telling her age because she tells it to everybody, actually called after she read the article in the paper about the Embrace Millcreek survey, and she doesn't have a computer, but she wanted a copy of the survey. So I mailed her a copy of the survey, and she filled it out and sent it back, and she was very excited about being able to participate. So I think that that's terrific. That's where the zucchini bread came from, yes. She also brought in a couple loaves of zucchini bread with their survey, so we appreciate that too.
I had a guy that was probably in the 70s call for the same thing, but he didn't bring us anything. Yeah,
So make that a requirement in the future.
bring in zucchini bread.
No, no, we are not.
Just kidding.
No.
Just kidding. Aaron, anything?
This week at Nationwide is Red Ribbon Week, which focuses on drug and alcohol prevention. So the Lead and Seed group at McDowell is putting out announcements each morning, having a drug-free pledge at lunch, hanging up signs around the school, and posting messages on the marquee outside the building. So they're working diligently to focus on drug and alcohol prevention this week.
Beautiful. Thank you, Aaron. Attorney Shaw?
Yes, as the board knows, and those who have, I think, read the paper and saw the news, the township received a complaint filed in federal court last week with respect to our new sign ordinance, and the complaint and challenges the limitation placed on the number of signs that are allowed, number of temporary signs allowed on properties. And we received a communication from the attorney for the plaintiff, along with the complaint requesting that the supervisors voluntarily agree to not enforce the 2-yard sign restriction until after a court renders a decision on a request for a preliminary injunction, which is a motion that they have filed. After reviewing kind of the timing of things, and given that the court would be likely to give us more time to respond to this lawsuit, given that we're in the context of the election season, would be my recommendation to agree to temporarily stay the enforcement of the 2-yard sign restriction until the court would render a decision on any preliminary injunction motion that is filed, or that the matter is otherwise resolved.
Just so everyone is clear, our new sign ordinance does not mention political signs, and Mark, you just mentioned this is the political campaign season, but that is what the complaint references.
Correct.
Specifically, political campaign signs.
Correct. Our sign ordinance is content neutral. That was the primary purpose of the revisions that were made to the sign as a result of a change in kind of Supreme Court precedent. And this recent complaint is seeking to, challenge the limitation that was imposed on the number of signs, number of temporary signs that would be allowed on a parcel.
So although our new ordinance does not even mention political signs, or in particular we don't target them, that's the way it's being interpreted by the complainant.
More or less, yes.
Okay.
I just have a quick comment about this. As many of you know, I have been commenting about this from the time we adopted this ordinance. And of course, we had to do this back in May to adopt the ordinance because we were under the pressure of the court for the previous litigation that was going on. So we had to hurry up and get something done. And at that time, I also mentioned that I think we'll be visiting this again. And I hate to use the phrase, "I told you so," but it's like deja vu all over again, like Yogi Berra says. This has me very frustrated in the fact that I just want to throw my hands up in the air. Some of you know that I was a former zoning and code administrator for many years. I could see that this was something that just, is it worth it? Is it worth the bother? I've heard a lot of conversation, among us supervisors. Quite honestly, I think, and Mark, of course, I'm not an attorney, but would this have been better for the attorney representing Mrs. Shea to file a curative amendment to the zoning ordinance? In other words, saying, hey, their opinion is that there's a defect in the ordinance and that they have a curative amendment that they'd like to enter. Rather than go right to federal court.
That certainly would have been one of the opportunities that they had. In addition, frankly, the attorney representing this person is the same attorney in the prior lawsuit, and he was given a draft of the ordinance that was ultimately passed, and made no comment about him believing there were any issues with respect to the ordinance that the township was passing, so.
It's kind of maddening that he sees the township as a cash cow. And obviously, he's trying to get money out of this. I mean, we're going to pay legal fees to your firm in representing us in this. And I'm just, I would like, and if there's not going to be a curative amendment brought on by a resident, I think that we as a township should revisit this matter. Let's look at the election this year, coming up next Tuesday. Let's see, I believe there's a Superior Court judge, a Commonwealth Court judge.
There's 12 candidates.
12 candidates, okay. I was going to go through the whole list, but thank you for, for clarity's sake.
I'm sorry, there's 12 positions,
12 positions open
at least 24
that
candidates.
we can vote on. That means if I wanted to support every one of those candidates, I'd have to have 12 signs.
Correct.
And it's just for a short period of time, because quite honestly, I wouldn't have them all in my yard after the election's over. I think most people use good judgment and good common sense and take the signs down. They put them up at appropriate time, they take them down, so what? It's really, in my estimation, of course, speaking as a former zoning administrator, is it worth the effort to even have a limit or even the time frame on it? Most people, as I say, most people use good judgment and good taste when it comes to signs. They don't want to be messing up their yard. I'm just telling you from my standpoint, picking battles, this is not a battle that I would like to pick.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but there is no time frame, correct?
Correct.
The ordinance doesn't
Yes.
specify when signs, a temporary sign can be placed or when it can be removed, although
There's
many.
a time limit, right?
No.
No.
Okay.
Many municipalities do have time limits on them. 30 days before the event, and it has to be gone down 7 days after the event, and the event could include an election, I suppose.
Yeah.
We didn't go that far because we just wanted to address the amount of, I've referred to it as sign pollution, that we allow in the township. And it is frustrating, John, and Mark, when, as you said, Mark, we had a draft ordinance that we publicized pretty broadly. A lot of people knew about it, that we were working on this. And if there was a problem with that draft, you would have thought that the attorney who sued us previously would have commented on that draft and said, boy, I can see a problem with a specific situation here, but that didn't happen until after we passed it. I still question as whether or not limiting the number of temporary signs is or should be an issue, because other municipalities do the same thing, and I don't know, where you draw the line.
Well, I think at the same time, if I recall, God, I hope it's not in there still, but there's a provision about how many flags can be displayed. Am I correct on that? Was that removed?
No, it's still there.
It's still in there.
Still there. And how many flags is it we're allowed to have?
I
3?
think it was 3.
3 flags. Please, I'm not trying to get all wrapped up in the First Amendment, because I know it comes responsibility. But for you young people out there that may know history or read about it, back in '78, the hostages taken from America were held in Iran. And there was a gentleman down in Hermitage, Pennsylvania, that put up a new flag every day. Those flags still on display in Hermitage. There's 444 flags there. I would hate to think that that person's in violation of any sort of ordinance by doing that. This is the thing, patriotism goes in different ways, free speech goes in different ways. And as I said, I'm not going to get up here and pound my fist and scream and yell. I'm just very concerned of the direction we're heading on this. And do we want to continue taking up these battles that really go nowhere? I think we have far more important battles to take up. Of course, we talked about cleaning out our storm sewer today. Those are the things that I think are really important that we really need to look at and spend our time and energy on. So,
Well, John, let me throw this one at you then. I understand where you're coming from, but
throw it, I'll catch it.
as the former zoning code administrator, what if I felt that I really had no problem with me keeping a car in my front yard that's on blocks, missing a hood and doors.
Well, that's going to be a property maintenance violation there. That is going to be that.
Yeah, but why? Why isn't that, why don't I have the freedom to do that?
Why? Because that is going to decline your property values. That's what that's going to do, and it's something that is well served past its purpose there. I mean, we're talking two different matters.
Well, I'm
there,
working
Brian.
on it. I'm working on the car. As it's
Well,
sitting
then what we would tell you is to put it in the garage, is what we tell you. If
Well,
it's a restoration.
My point here is, I think that as part of the ordinance, the sign ordinance that we adopted,
Yeah.
we refer to the fact, and I wrote down the terminology that I think we use. Appearance, property values, safety and welfare of our residents. If my next door neighbor puts up, we'll say 20 yard signs, temporary signs, in their front yard, and they're there for 2 or maybe 3 months, I think that that is going to impact my property value.
what if
Because
it
my neighbor has all those signs in their front yard.
I don't want this to seem like court, but what about if it were 20 pink flamingos out in the front yard? You know, I think that's tacky, and I think that, yeah, I agree with you, having signs out there that long, but we're talking an issue that, how many times, and I'm trying to remember in the almost 30 years of code enforcement, that I've had to go after somebody to have them remove signs after a certain time. That's when we have time frames on it. It's hard to make that same comparison. Yes, we have signs that we, you know, and I think we order our streets department, if we see them out there in December, and they're out in the right of way, take them down. You know, they don't belong out there anymore.
Well, I can tell you that driving around the township over the last several days, the places that typically, and I'm sure that everybody out here knows of them, typically is loaded with campaign signs this time of year. Empty lots that every candidate and friend of a candidate sticks a campaign sign. You can drive around and they're not there. They're not there this year. Those signs are gone. The signs that we saw last year at this time in residential neighborhoods, the 4x8s in people's front yards that we got a lot of complaints about are not there this year. So I think that the sign ordinance as adopted is doing the job. Now, whether or not we want to pursue fighting this lawsuit regarding the number of signs, again, it's what number, if 2 is too few, what is okay? Is 4 okay? Is 10 okay? Should you not have a limit?
I've got 2 candidate signs in my yard. One is for a Millcreek race, one is for a city race. Okay? I'm supporting a former cop here that's running for district judge in the city of Erie. You know, where do we draw the line?
Well, that's my question.
I mean, and that's the thing, you know, I don't know if we really have the ability to be the taste police on it when it comes to that. Like I said, 20 pink flamingos in the front yard. I wouldn't want to have that next to me, but if somebody had it there, I'd be like, oh God, I wish they'd do something with that. You know, this really comes a matter of taste, and like I said, I think that we're stepping into things that we really should be careful about, especially when it comes to First Amendment. You know, like I said, I'm not going to get all wrapped up in this, guys, but I'm telling you, these are things that we're going to get the heck beat out of us on, and not to mention what we look like in the public, too.
Well, I can tell you that from the number of calls that I received last year at this time complaining about signs, I've received no calls this year in regard to the new ordinance. No,
Okay.
other than the one email, who I responded to, unfortunately, who was upset with the fact that she had received a courtesy letter saying that she had too many signs in her yard. Other than that email,
Yeah. And that was a courtesy letter, too. That was not an enforcement action.
Correct.
So therefore, even as far as having an appeal, it wasn't even ripe for an appeal. But yet, this attorney decided to take it right to federal court, obviously because, in his opinion, it's a civil rights
it
violation.
was a request to come into compliance.
Anyway, I've said my piece on it there.
Well, Mark, what are you looking
That's it.
from us, or looking for from us?
I guess I would, look for, if you're in agreement with my recommendation, a motion to hold in abeyance specifically, and let me get the reference to the section number, but be with respect to ordinance 2017-8, section 145-82, A to C1 and C1, which is the limitation on the number of signs, which limits the number of signs to 2. I would look for a motion to agree to hold off enforcement of that provision of the ordinance pending resolution of this matter with this current lawsuit.
And that would be the only portion of the ordinance that would be
Correct.
held in abeyance? is right.
That's all that was requested, and that's all I would recommend.
And I will make that motion.
Is there a second, John? I'll second it. Regrettably, I'll second it.
Okay.
This gives us time to decide just whether or not we want to pursue this. Thankfully, the rest of the ordinance will still be
It'll still be intact.
enforced as far as no signs in the right-of-way, which has always been a big problem.
That's right. I agree.
Until someone requests us to hold that in abeyance too.
Don't know if that could happen.
I would hope not, since they would be putting signs on property that does not belong to them.
Yeah.
The size of signs will tell us we can.
No, I understand, yeah, this is, we're trying to do something to protect the residents of the township, and someone is looking for a way to somehow defeat that attempt. I don't know if First Amendment rights has anything to do with it, to tell you the truth.
That's where they're going with it, so we'll wait to see what happens in court. So.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Public comment? Mr. Grove?
I vote yes.
Mr. Morgan?
I vote yes.
I vote yes. Anything else, Mark?
That's all I have. Thank you.
Cheryl? Rick? Citizens to be heard. Mr. Bear?
Gary Bear, Filer Drive. I have to talk about, I'm not talking about if you were asked to do it that last session, but I have to agree that somewhere along the line, if I were a legal troll, I would be after your interest requirement on the next thing. So the next election cycle, you're going to be sued again. So I think the concept of we becoming somebody's $15,000 election cycle or $30,000 a year buffer, and we know who you're talking about, is should be avoided. So how do you prevent me, the taxpayer, from paying for this guy's or gal's, whoever it's going to be, income? I'm looking at the concept of freedom of speech, and if I take and put in 2 signs, I can change those 2 signs every hour on the hour and get all 20 people in.
Gary, you could make one 5-square-foot sign and be in compliance and put every candidate on there, and
But you have to look at it from the point of view as a safety issue if you're driving down the road trying to read that sign. So you haven't even gotten into that aspect of the thing. And I'm saying, where does this stop? Where do you stop a troll from going on, in my personal opinion, a troll action? So you do have a speech that saying, but our ordinance, is our ordinance setting us up for continued lawsuits?
Yeah.
Versus how temporary is a temporary sign? This is going to go on, obviously. And so my question comes back, where does this thing end up? Does the court have to be called into play every election because someone slices and dices something different? How do you prevent that? Now, John puts out a point saying, well, you only do this temporarily and we go on it. But there's somebody going to say, well, we can play this all year long with other issues too, if we wish. And so the question comes back, how, is this ordinance going to be lawsuit bait?
Yeah.
And I just asked township supervisors and of course our solicitor, is this an ongoing issue that's going to run up charges constantly and be a distraction and prevent us from doing the things that the township really does well, taking care of the citizens and providing protection? So,
Well, our job is also to protect property values.
I understand, but if the Supreme Court or some federal court is going to say it's not an issue, and free speech trumps that, with, you know, some judgment has to be made to say, well, look, we're learned lawyers, and we have experience, and we have a federal consultant or something. Where are we on that edge? So, you know, just again, you can go back and appeal to courts to say, well, what's the limit on free speech for elections? And you won't get an answer. You'll just get lawsuits.
Well, the limit is, and the ruling was by the Supreme Court, that if you are going to have regulations regarding signs in people's yards, that you can't differentiate between, I like broccoli, and I'm going to vote for so-and-so.
But you're going to litigate each one of those things, and we're going to be the ones, because we're not pioneering township, because you went through this thing forever, it seems like, to try to get all the input in, and this person, this lawyer didn't bother, others didn't bother, but they will when they get a chance to sue you.
Sure.
So, you know, it's been a great effort, and why are we taking it on the chin as taxpayers for the state of Pennsylvania and for the United States when somebody needs to step up to the bar and say enough is enough, and what's good, what's bad in terms of neutral content flagging or promoting some subject, because I have 10 people I like to write in for writing candidates for each office. So, you know, this could be all on and on and on. When is it limiting my speech? This is an academic question, but someone should look at it.
Well, once
It's costing
again,
me money.
we're beating a dead horse here, but once again, we're not limiting your free speech.
I understand that, but
The ordinance as written allows you to have 20 square feet of surface area in your yard expressing your opinions on any issue you'd like, for as long as you like. It's just limited to 20 total square feet
so why is
on
this a
2
lawsuit?
structures.
Why is it a lawsuit? Do they expect you to,
Because 20 isn't enough.
then why are we having a ban then? Why are we saying, okay, go right ahead and do it until this injunction is issued?
Well, that's our only option right now.
Oh, you say, no, we'll put it up there and take it on the chin. You said you didn't charge him anything. You're going to be in court anyway. You sent him a courtesy letter, and that's what you get back. So you're going to be in court. You're going to go through this. Take a stand or don't. Roll over or get tough.
Yeah. Just something that I'd like to throw out here just for observation. At the end of November, see how many signs are still out there. Because I will tell you that chances are very good that within a couple days after the election, the signs in my yard will be down. They'll be out of there.
Well, Brian's actually right, you know, because how many signs do you see now? The ordinance had, even some of the candidates have stopped it. Can I put some-
It's worked. It's definitely worked.
It has worked.
Yes.
But obviously someone thinks it should be fish bait or easy to get.
Right?
A payoff of some sort, it seems like.
So we should throw up our hands and say, okay, I quit,
No,
Because one guy sued
No.
us.
because we're getting sued. I'm afraid we're going to get sued for just about everything, Gary, so we should just stop making all our,
no,
It's
we
not
should-
quite that way.
We should, no, you're going to make an ordinance, you believe that ordinance is correct, you stand tall on it. And the legal end of it is going to have to bring our arguments as sufficient to overcome the other guy. But you have to pick my land values as well. I agree with that. Keep the place look better. What are we doing enhancing or milking it if we're going to have litter?
Yeah.
And that's what this is, because you can't read 15 or 20 signs going along at 25 miles an hour, and you can't read at 40 miles an hour, let alone 10 miles an hour. Get your message across and be safe.
that's part of the ordinance. Concern for
So you can
public
tell-
welfare.
That's right. And so why aren't we emphasizing our public safety?
It's in the ordinance, and it'll be in our defense.
Okay, but my point of view.
Well, I think, Mr. Barrett, your question is why vote to kind of hold off enforcement. I think, Mr. Shaw, it was in order to give us more time to research their argument.
One of the bases for, and this is not atypical in these situations, oftentimes in a constitutional challenge to an ordinance, the municipality will agree to hold off enforcing it, in large part because it gives the municipality more time to react to, what's occurring. And the courts, if you don't do that, we may very well end up having a hearing next week on the constitutionality of the ordinance, and frankly, we would want to have more time to prepare if in fact a decision is made to defend, to be able to do that in a fashion that, really defends the ordinance and gives us the proper amount of time to do so. So it's really a question of circumstance, and I think it makes sense from a legal perspective to agree to an abeyance of the enforcement to enable us to be in a better position to evaluate the claim, as well as if a decision then is made to defend it, to then proceed to have sufficient time to make a proper defense.
So, but if I'm a troll, I can pick the strategy and the timing you want.
Did
we do a risk analysis?
It's the problem. It's a problem with, any type of constitutional claims. The standards are amorphous. The standards are, is this narrowly tailored to some other type of interest? There's no always a clear-cut answer, and it's part of the risk you base. I mean, we looked at the content neutrality of the ordinance. We thought we had an ordinance that was in pretty good shape, but that doesn't mean it was that no one's going to try to challenge it.
True, but again, did you do risk analysis on those things that seem to be potentially challenging? And as any business would do, you would do a risk analysis of where you stand on those things that most likely would be challenged.
Gary, just to give you some perspective, we're getting a constitutional claim regarding a stormwater project. A stormwater lawsuit has a constitutional claim in it. That's right. The ADA lawsuit we're dealing with right now, I mean, pretty much anything the government does at any level, someone can file a lawsuit on. There's a risk for it.
But some are more contentious than others. And to John's point, some are worth it, and some, well, what's going to happen here? If you do an analysis, what really is going to happen? And obviously, you can make an appeal to the citizenry, that remember about property values, et cetera, et cetera. We do have the right to make a formal position on this thing for the benefit of the community. And if you're going to say we're going to have a good community, and we need citizen cooperation. So it's a sales job, but it's something that easily can be done. But anyway,
Well, you can make the appeal. That doesn't mean anybody's going to listen to it, not without something behind it. You can make the appeal to the public saying it would be in the best interest of the township and all of its residents if we limited the signs to 2, temporary signs to 2. That's in the best interest of the public.
It's the best interest of the public.
But you're going to have a lot of public out there who say, no, I want 10.
Brian, that logic says that no one would speed because there's a penalty against speeding or make illegal turns. But they do it constantly.
Yes, you're making my point, yes.
I'm saying that, but that doesn't work. People still speed.
So we shouldn't have.
So we shouldn't have speed limits?
No, you said if you have enforcement behind it, not asking for just cooperation, it wouldn't work. And I'm saying, no, it doesn't work with enforcement behind it because they still.
Don't you think it works better than not having the law?
I don't think it is much better at all unless the guy's sitting right there. Unless the police officer sitting right there with a radar gun.
Well, wait a minute, what's the guy with the radar gun doing?
He's enforcing it.
Enforcing what? We don't have a law anymore. I'm saying you either have a law or you don't. You're saying appeal to the public to maintain their speed. Well, then you do away with the speed limit. The best speed on Route 20 is 40 miles an hour, but we're not going to have a speed limit.
No, you set a speed limit for their personal safety because of the road conditions.
But you don't enforce it.
Well, that's what you're doing because, yes, you're not enforcing it. But people will not follow your law or any sign unless there's enforcement behind it. You're
Exactly.
Right. But what does that buy us in this case where a sign is not the same as a major criminal harm? It's not, you just got to be, what's the...
Yeah.
But I don't want to drag this thing on further, but to John's point...
These kids want to go home.
I understand.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Gary.
Anyone else? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:31.
Also move.
We're adjourned.
You're watching the Millcreek Government Channel, powered by WQLN Public Media.